Welcome to the Mason Duchatschek Show. I created it as a place where you can access expert ideas, strategies, and tools that can make you exponentially more valuable, if not indispensable, to the company you work for. And if you own a business, I want to help you make it much more profitable in the meantime and more valuable for down the road so you can attract more offers and bigger offers faster if you ever decide to sell it. My favorite topics are obviously related to business, to people, and the leaders who inspire them. Today, we're speaking with Chris Riley, the CEO of United Cutwater, and a recognized expert in transforming businesses into thriving, acquisition-ready powerhouses. Through their unique equity revitalization process, Chris and his team bring strategic and financial resources to help companies achieve their maximum potential, unlocking growth, enhancing value, and facilitating seamless exits at levels that traditional methods just simply can't reach. With a focus on building stronger, more synergistic organizations and creating lasting success for business owners, Chris has developed a proven blueprint for navigating some of the most complex challenges that businesses face. And if you want to know how companies can achieve extraordinary results while preparing for the future, then you're in the right place. So with that introduction, I want to welcome Chris. I appreciate you being here.
You got it, Mason. Excited to be here. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get going.
All right, fair enough. So when someone asks you what you do and what is it about your background that makes your insights valuable, what do you tell them?
Well, I've been in business for about almost 40 years now. I started pretty early. All we do right now is we take businesses to an exit. And there's a lot of baby boomers out there that are getting ready to take their business to an exit. So what I tell people is there are several ways that you can exit your business. And you'd be surprised that the one that you think is the best way, calling an investment banker or a business broker, that's really not the best way to exit at what we call the optimum value. So because we're operations, I'm an investment banker. I have partners that have been running businesses for 3 decades. We really get somewhere between 20 and 50% more at an exit than if you just called an investment banker and put your business up for sale. And people are very intrigued as to how we do that. But, you know, we do it. We don't do anything other than that.
So for Basic 101, you said there's lots of ways people go about selling a business. And obviously you mentioned the first one being, people typically will call a business broker or an investment banker. What are the other options and which ones are good? And what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of each?
Well, it depends on how skilled you are in buying and selling businesses. You could sell your business to a competitor. You could do a merger. You know, you're losing market share. They're gaining market share. You have something they want. So you create a merger. Well, lawyers can do that. Lawyers can negotiate. Good M&A lawyers can usually implement that entire transaction. If that's the best possible exit, well, you might have just hit it right on the head. You can call an investment banker or a business broker, depending on how big you are, and they'll take you through a very professional process. They're very, very good at what they do. The other options are you can just wait and die, and they'll sell it for you. And you can create succession plans. You can sell it to your kids. You can have a friendly transaction and get lawyers to kind of piece it together. And so with all of those options, it depends on your objective. Do you want just the optimum value, or do you want your business to survive in a way that you built it to stay, not someone to change your business? So those are all factors that we consider when we're talking to business owners.
When you talk to business owners, how much of it, and I'm sure that the answer varies, but how much of it do you see business owners value placing on, I want to get top dollar versus I want to leave a great legacy or a great reputation, or I want my kids to have something that they can do well? I mean, what are the typical factors that are involved in those decisions for people who have a business?
Traditionally, it comes down to money because that's what they've been doing. You know, they've been building their business. They didn't build their business just so they could invent electricity and then die and be known for, inventing electricity. They did it to make a living. And if you've got the wealth managers, which are the key in this entire situation, the wealth managers are the ones that know where the buckets are, know the tax planning, and know what's needed. One thing they can't do, they can't advise a business owner as to when to sell. They're not qualified to do that. But when they do sell the business owner hands the wealth manager a bucket of money. And now they get paid to manage the money. So it all comes down to money. But there is a big factor. You don't want to sell out to a competitor that you've been fighting for decades. And sometimes you'll take a little bit less to make sure that your business is in the right hands. You know, it depends on the business. It depends on if it's a service business. Like if you're selling a wealth management practice, now it's a big deal. We're actually writing a book on that. It's a major crisis right now. Who's going to handle my clients when I retire? That's a big one. So it just depends on the business.
So there's that old saying that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And I see people who have sold their businesses and peers in their business can be like, oh, they were lucky. No, they were prepared. They made different choices and they made smarter choices and better decisions than some of their rivals. And that's why they got lucky, for lack of a better explanation. But in your experience, what are some of the things that businesses can do to get luckier? I mean, be prepared. What are some maybe cost-cutting strategies that can make a significant impact on the value of a business without harming the business's core operations or their culture?
Well, the first thing people need to recognize is there's only one definition of valuation. So usually the answer, if I was an investment banker and I was on your podcast, I would say, well, get a valuation. Know where you're starting. See what the market thinks that you're worth. That's junk. It's ridiculous. There's no need to do that.
Why do you feel that way?
I'll tell you. There's only one definition of valuation in our world, and that's what the buyer's willing to pay for your business. It doesn't matter what a CPA or a valuation company came up to. It doesn't matter that the industry is a 7 multiple on EBITDA and a 3 multiple on revenue. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've created a business that has differentiators and is special. If you find somebody that really wants and needs the products, the services, and the differentiators that you've got, they're going to pay a premium. For instance, what was the multiple on Twitter when Elon Musk bought it? You don't know the answer. Why? Because it changed dramatically because he wanted it. So when people get caught up, it's okay. You can leave 20% on the table. If you sell your business for $50 million, 50, you could have got 60. But does it matter to you? Maybe not. It's okay. You don't know that you could get 60. There's only one definition of valuation. So when we look at a business, we go and we find the differentiators, and then we know business. We know competitors. We know all of the customers that are out there, and we're going to go find that entity that wants that business more than all the other bidders that are going to come into the investment banking process. We don't even get into
That's
it.
what I was going to ask. Like, how would a business owner, let's just say they've got some strategic advantages and things that are of exponentially greater value than anything you'd see on some regular report. How do they go about communicating that and getting the attention of ideal prospective buyers?
Well, they don't, because they're not skilled at selling businesses. And one of the biggest questions I usually get, Chris, how could you run my business better than me? I've been doing it for 35 years. How could you run my business better than me?
That's a question I'd like to hear the answer to. That's a great question.
I can't. You know what I can do? I can sell your business much better than you can. So sometimes we will improve the business to become more acquisition attractive. For instance,
how do you do that?
If you've got a plastics company and you're doing medical plastics and automotive plastics, you came out of the automotive plastics, you really know automotive plastics, but then you started pivoting because medical plastics became pretty popular, and you're running $100 million in revenue, and 60% of them are automotive plastics, which trades at about a 4 multiple. And 40% is trading on medical plastics, which runs at about a 7 multiple. What we would do is say, how long do you have? How long would it take for us to start shifting to more medical plastics We have C-suite people. Our entire company, by the way, United Cutwater is our private equity division. Cutwater Advisory Partners is our core quarterback that runs through this prove it canvas and this matrix and everything. So we would look at it and we would say, we can build out the medical plastics with you. Why? They know medical plastics. They just didn't know that by selling it, they're going to get a 25% bump in their sale price by just starting to shift more towards medical plastics. Now, you would say to yourself, you might not know medical plastics. You would go, why would I do that? Why would I let these guys come in and do that? We don't do anything unless we're very skilled at it. We have CTOs, we have CEOs, we have people that have run fabrication companies, technology companies, hospitality. I spent 20 years in the hospitality business. We aren't doing anything unless the buyers that we talk to tell us, hey, nice company, we like it. If you guys had more recurring revenue over here in this division and had some AI agents that were reducing your business development costs, we would ramp that multiple up and we would take it at a much higher level. The business owner doesn't have access to those private equity groups, investment banking folks that give us the prevailing wind. They do have access to their customers and their competitors, but that's a dangerous game to play. Once you let out of the bag, you're selling your business, resumes for your executives start going out, customers start getting nervous, competitors start circling the waters. You got to be really careful. So we have an organizational development company that's growth related that helps people grow. And it's a very specialized process, but it's because I've been doing this for 40 years to know that's the way to get the optimum value.
What type of specific systems or areas of business operations do you typically focus on first?
Whatever the buyer says we need a little bit more on, we do that. We dig in. We have a PhD on our team that has more designations of initials after his name than before his name. He's a Six Sigma black belt. He's a project management expert. He's a risk management expert. We know process improvement. We know all of the work that I've been doing. And then I've further educated myself, at the Harvard Business School to just kind of see what those guys know. I wasn't really expecting a lot because, there's a lot of books that you can read. Everything's online. You can read it. Why don't people? Well, because they don't have all the time in the world. But there are some really interesting ways. You ask the question, what do we do when we go in? Well, we look at two things. We look at a performance gap and we look at an opportunity gap. If you have a performance gap is we're running at about 70% efficiency. We're just not hitting the mark. Our gross margin is a lot lower than the average. For whatever reason, we're just missing the mark. We need to tune up. We need to get better at gross margin. That's going to bring up our EBITDA, and we're doing it okay, but we could do it better. We need to improve our performance so that those numbers come up. Opportunity gap, Kodak. What happened when Kodak decided to ignore the digital film opportunity gap?
That was a big mistake.
It was a bad day. They just missed it. So AI is an opportunity gap for home businesses, plumbers, HVAC companies, everybody that could get an AI agent that now actually talks like a person. We have one company that they have 12 business development people spending $1 million a year. It's going to take less than 3 months to drop that $1 million to about $80,000 a year. And we will lose zero efficiency. Now, I'm an organizational psychologist, so I like to go get those people jobs. So we're not just going to say, hey, thanks a lot. Computers are taking your job. And that's going to be a big problem. People are going to need to find jobs. But an opportunity gap is you need to pivot in order to keep up with the demand. Our number 3, we have 10 steps in our Prove It Canvas. Number 3 is called an innovative demand calibration. We need to calibrate what we can produce to what's in higher demand and producing higher revenue profits. So we're not just going to go after revenue. We're going to go after revenue that generates profits that are going to increase the enterprise value. That's different than a consulting firm that just goes in and knows Six Sigma, and they could go in and make you the best automotive plastics company in the world. And they're not going to sell for more than what we sell for when we shift to medical plastics. That's a pretty good example.
You mentioned there's 10 different steps and you went through a couple of them. What are some of the other ones?
So the first thing we look is at the financial strength. We identify how strong are they? Where are they in the financial world of sustainability? Then we look at the risk management components. Where are you gonna stumble? Where are you gonna hit a roadblock? And where, when the company comes in that we find that really wants you, and they say, whoa, but wait a minute, you guys aren't on this platform. We have to identify that. Then we look at the innovative demand calibration and the product and service rebalancing. Are there things that we could do in a different light, in a different segment that are more attractive out there? Then once we have those four, that's tier one. Now we look at how much is it going to cost? One of the biggest problems we have is people are like, do you think we should cut costs? And when should we cut cost? And is that going to increase the value of our business? You're going to do everything that you need to do to increase that enterprise value because you're getting a payday. And if you don't have the money, we'll bring the money.
Gotcha.
Because we're doing the upside. So the number 5 step is how much is it going to cost us to shift to the medical plastics? We might bring a couple $1 million. We have an equipment leasing company. We may get the equipment for $4 million, but our rule is 3x and above. If we put $4 million in, we better be getting another $12 million upon exit, or we're not doing it.
Gotcha.
So then you just go up the line. We look at the operations. Now we look at that performance gap. We send all of our PhDs in there. Hey, how could we get a better performance out of this? What's happening in the business model? Then our tech guys go to work. Hey, integration planning is KPMG's number 2 reason why mergers just don't work and they don't add value. Integration planning is critical in technology. And since everybody's kind of a technology company now, if you have a company that wants to buy you, we need to make sure that you can easily plug into their systems. So when we're trolling for the ideal buyer, we know what the buyer's systems are. And we may shift the target company that we're working with to be on those platforms so that it's an easier integration going into, that transaction. Because you don't want 2 CIOs, barking at each other on which one's going to take over. You need to solve that problem. So those are most of the components. The number 10 is what I do, which is pre-paving that entire exit. Whether it's a private equity group, whether we're going to go through the investment banking channels, we write the teasers. We're in the management meetings. We're ensuring that buying company knows, hey, we know your business really well. And by the way, you have $2.4 billion in revenue. We're going to decrease your cost of sales by 2%. Do the math on that. You should buy this company just for that reason. Those are things that sellers, they just don't have that expertise in order to bring it to the table.
What I'm taking away from this conversation is multiple things already. First and foremost, you're beginning with the end in mind. I worked for a gentleman by the name of John Hauser, and he was an executive at IBM back in the day, and my first real sales manager. And he used to always say, the objective of any salesperson or sales manager is to find the customer's itch and scratch it. And Stephen Covey always says, begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're talking to people who are going to buy businesses. What do you want? What do you see value? What do you need? And then you're reverse engineering these businesses to fill that at a much higher value because you're giving them exactly what they want to scratch their itch. And I think that the things that you've talked about are valuable to every business owner to listen to, because they should be doing a lot of these things internally, but I'm willing to bet that they don't know what they don't know. But I'm willing to bet that all of those little different segments that you talked about are opportunities for improvement. Well, those same gaps, they could be looking at those things inside their business now.
Yeah, well, you're right, Mason. And you're very well read. And a lot of people are very well read, in the 80s and 90s. I know Stephen Covey's systems. I know that you're supposed to think of the end in mind. But until I really lived it and took clients, early on when I was doing this, don't tell these guys this. I really didn't know if it was going to work or not. I'm like, it makes a lot of sense that
Right.
we're doing this, but I'm not sure, this cross-selling matrix that I did is fascinating. It's just a fascinating case study. I didn't know if it was really going to cause them to increase. I was a lot younger, a little bit more arrogant. Some people may claim a lot more arrogant. And I was so confident that everybody's like, wow, this guy's he's a wizard, man. He's got it all done. And behind the scenes, I'm like, man, I hope this works because these people are putting a lot of energy into this. Well, it did work. And it worked because I stuck with the principle of think of the end in mind. What do they really want? They want something that is going to further their business, that's going to give them an opportunity to fill an opportunity gap that they can't organically, they don't have the time to organically build. And it made so much sense. I'm like, this isn't just technology. We could do this across the spectrum of all industries. I just need the experts. And so I just started building it. Took me 12 years, but now we got it. Now we know. We can look at a business, and there's 127 different data points in this algorithm that spit out this stuff. So there's a lot of statistics, but there's also a lot of common sense and a lot of really good CEOs that look at it and say, yeah, so we have 2 business owners right now. We're not going to have them download a bunch of due diligence. They're moving fast and furious. We're just going to meet them in person. And I did due diligence in New York in the investment banking world for 10 years. I can do it myself. So I'm going to do it myself. I'm just going to say, listen, I'll do it for you. Don't worry about it. I want to understand what's going on. And when you truly care about not just the end in mind of the buying entity, but the end in mind of the business owner and the family.
Let's talk a little bit about that. You talk about, what about business owners who are looking to pass their company to the next generation? What are the foundational changes that they should prioritize now to make that transition as seamless as possible?
The first thing, and it takes a little while to get to it, the first thing is, do the kids want it? Is that what they were geared to do? I believe everybody was kind of given a nice program inserted in them. They have natural talents. I have my own personality assessment organizational system. You're very well versed in that. We know that some people are geared to do, more analytical or more intellectual work, and some people are more geared to do sales work and relational work. Well, if you have a very heavy technology-based company and you have a relational individual, they may not want the business, but they're smart and they're great. But if they don't want the business, how do you tell mom or dad no? That's a tough one. And so we do a lot of family counseling and talking through that with the wealth managers, because they're the ones that should really know the family and know where the buckets are. So if they do want it, we don't want to pass the business on to somebody who isn't going to run it as effectively as the parents are running it. So we'll say, I think we need to go get a president or a CEO, or we need to go get a business development person. We're looking at the end in mind of what that business is going to look like over the next 10 years. Last thing we want is the business to be inefficient after the transaction, and the parents, what are they going to want to do? They're going to want to come back. We don't want that. So you really have to get down to the core of what does everybody want? And then I think you can design the best system. In many cases, they end up taking it because it's easier to keep it in the family. And I would say that they're losing money, and that's okay. It's my job to tell them that. But they're happier because they keep it in the family. And that's usually the trump card. There's nothing you can do about that.
Well, that's an interesting answer because, as you know, I own a company that sells pre-employment skill, attitude, and personality assessment tools to help companies avoid hiring disasters and get the best people. And the industrial psychologist I worked with, I was a distributor of his products for 20 or 30, they're almost 30 years. and he had a son, and that family business was of no interest to his son at all. So I was the number one distributor and ended up buying the business from the industrial psychologist who created all these skill, attitude, and personality assessment tools and had them validated. So I've been on the receiving end of being at the right place at the right time and having the knowledge that I could continue his business and hopefully improve the legacy of the work he did, certainly continue it. And I think that was important to him. Number one, that his son was happy and was fulfilling his dreams, not dad's. And two, he knew that the business that he was turning over, in this case to me, was in good hands and would continue his legacy. So that worked out. And I can see why you'd say that. I think about what could have happened if he had tried to force the business on his son who didn't want to do it. That, for a long list of reasons, that could have been a disaster. And that's just one specific example. I'm sure you've seen that happen over and over.
Yeah. And it is. And depends on how old the family members are and their family situations and what options they have. It's much better if you have a larger business and in dollar volume to go ahead and sell the business and distribute the funds so that the heirs can do what they want with that money, rather than keep the money in the business and let them continue to just, get profits every year and pay themselves over time, because eventually that enterprise value is going to drop. And
what do you say to business owners who have kids that aren't sure if they want to take it over? What kind of advice or guidance would you have for them if they're, they know they can't do this forever, or they don't want to run the business forever? They've got kids that are capable. They don't know how interested they are. What kind of advice or feedback would you offer that business owner?
I think the biggest problem is really getting everybody to be honest about their feelings and how they feel, because you don't want to disappoint your parents, and parents don't want to disappoint their kids. Those of us that are parents, we want the best for our kids. We don't want to give them something that they're not going to enjoy, but we also like them to, follow in dad's footsteps, if you will. So
Sure.
the biggest thing is really getting honesty. And sometimes that takes a family counselor. At times, just individual conversations. And then the family counselors can download to us and say, well, here's where we're at. Two of the kids kind of want to remain in the business, but they don't feel like they can run it. The one that could run it, they're off. They're already going to do something else, and they don't know how to tell dad that. So you just have to get everything out. Everyone has to be honest about what's going on. And then there's some hard decisions. This is a tough one. This is probably the toughest one. Then, a couple that owns a business and it's time to retire. That's easy. This one's tough. There's no easy solution.
There was a business I knew, and family-run business, healthy, good-sized business, and there were son and daughter, and the son was told, hey, before you come to work for the family business, I want you to go work for another company. I don't care what it is, for 2 years. And he did, because the father wanted him to have experience and see that there was a world outside of their company, which I thought was smart. So he actually had an appreciation for what he was walking into, and he didn't take things for granted. And that imposition was not placed on the daughter. And the son actually worked in all the different positions in the company, from warehouse during the summer as a manual laborer, all the way to, literally did every aspect of the business and learned operations of the company. And daughter, not so much. The son would be there early and leave late. Daughter would get there at 10, take a 2-hour lunch and leave at 4. And when it came down to it, the dad was in a tough position. And when it came down to it, as the story was told to me, they were sitting in the boardroom, and the father made the comment that he was going to put the son in charge. And the daughter starts crying in the boardroom. Changed his mind. Oh, no, okay, you guys have to work together. Literally just like that. And the son left the business at that point and said, and that was just a terrible position I wouldn't want any family to go through.
Yeah, it's the toughest part. And that's why people, planning is really important. And this needs to be headed off at the pass, if you will. You can't be down the road and then find that out. So you've got to do it early on. And like anything, we tell everybody, you give us 18 to 36 months, we'll hit that optimum value. But if you have to sell now, if you have a medical issue, we'll still get you that optimum value. It might only be 10% more, but we're still going to do everything we can. We just don't have time to switch from, automotive plastics to medical plastics, but we can tune you up and get things rolling and, throw some AI in there and, at least help you become more efficient. But planning is the key to it. Why would you spend 30 years in a business and then blow it because you want to sell your business right now? That makes no sense.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see business owners make when they decide to sell? And then they say, yep, I want to do something. What are some of the most common mistakes?
But hands down, number one, the absolute number one problem is they call an investment banker right away. That's the worst thing to do.
How come?
Because you have an as-is business now that someone's going to package up, put a SIM together, get a teaser, call 40 of their private equity guys, throw it out as quickly as they can gather the information and put it together. You can't change anything about that business. You have just as is that vehicle to sell a car. You didn't paint it. You didn't fix any dents. The windshield wiper isn't working. There's dog crap all over the car. And you're just taking it to the flea market going, who wants this? And so when you look at the valuation being what the buyer wants to pay for it, why wouldn't you go do the research on the buyers first before calling in the snipers? I call them snipers because they're going to go. If you're in a military operation, why do you call a sniper? For a conversation to ask them wind speed? And no, you call a sniper because you need a job done. Same thing with the investment bankers. Get your house in order, figure out your competitors, figure out your customers, figure out the private equity guys that can't organically grow anything. They need something at a certain level. And if we could just take it 12 or 18 months and you could get to the start line, we're like a farm system for the private equity groups. People have no idea. They're 12 million in revenue. If they could get to 18, private equity would take them at a premium. And the worst thing you can do is call the salesperson and go, hey, sell my business. They have no interest in improving your operations at all. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a place for it, but only when you've got your business to the point where it is acquisition attractive to the marketplace.
You just spoke about making sure it's attractive to the marketplace. What are some of the KPIs that should be focused on to make sure that it is attractive to the market?
I'll give you an analogy. Do you remember that movie Hitch?
Yes, I do.
Where he was a consultant and Kevin James was his client. Yes, I do remember
that movie.
Yeah. So if you're a consultant wanting to have someone get a gal or what are the 3 things you should do, Kevin James, to make yourself more attractive to women? See the question?
Right.
It's a trick question. It depends on the woman.
Right.
It depends on the business and what they need. If you have a division that is humming and doing great, and you can quadruple your scaling ability and revenues, and you have a company that just got started in that division, in that sector, and they don't know how to do that, you are a prime candidate. So everything you should do in the next 6 months should be tuning up that sector because they're going to pay 3 times as much for you than anybody else in your normal sector. That's one example. But primarily, I can answer your question. Get your financials in order. My number 1 of our 10 steps, financial analysis. I do it all. We take all of the private family expenses, the condo in Miami, the salary for the kid who just can't do anything, but you want to pay them. We pull it all below into a corporate office, and we let EBITDA and operating revenue shine. So if you have $1 million of all this family junk and your EBITDA was $8 million, it's now $7 million. And we do not allow EBITDA adjustments because The private equity guys and people, if we do go to an auction, they've got 4, maybe 5 minutes. They don't want to go down 16 EBITDA adjustments. You pull it below into a corporate office. That corporate office survives the transaction, but the 8 million of EBITDA goes with the buyer. Now, let's just say it's a 10 EBITDA. That's 80 million. If it's a 10 EBITDA and they're going with this ridiculous formula and they see 7, that's 70 million. They're not going to bid 80 million. They're going to bid 73 million because they like it. And then, oh, well, there's some other adjustments and things of that nature. Get the financials in order, run your job costing, know what it costs you to do your business, your products and services. Know what that gross margin is, because many people put a value on that. So getting your financials in order, and I'm not talking about making some journal entries with the CPA. I'm talking about reclassing your financial statements back 3 years.
Okay.
Because when they want 3 years, hey, tax returns, everybody knows everybody's monkeying with taxes. People don't buy companies on tax returns. They buy them on financial statements and metrics. But they just want to make sure that the tax returns don't have some weird stuff in them. So you can always reconcile to the net income, even if you have a corporate office. But get your financials in order, and then choose who you're going to read into the conversation that you're thinking of selling, and lock it in. And don't spread this around, and don't go play squash with your buddies and ask them if they have a condo in Miami you can buy because you're about to sell your business. Just keep your mouth shut. There's no value in that. And so those are the main items. And then the rest of it is all, hey, who's the gal you want? Let's just get this thing tuned up so that they really find it acquisition attractive.
Awesome. So if you've seen some of my previous podcasts, you probably know this question's coming because it's my favorite one. Based on your life experience and all the different things you've done, if you're talking to a business owner and there was only one piece of advice you could give, what is the most important piece of advice you could give to any business owner?
If they are selling their business, is this the premise, or just any business owner?
Any business owner.
Any business owner? Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Because I'm one of those individuals that just because I can do it doesn't mean I should do it. And everyone has a skill. Everyone has a talent. You can help identify the talent, with your assessment systems. Stay in your lane because you'll never second guess yourself. You'll always be able to say, hey, I was fully skilled at this and I gave everything I had. If it didn't work, it's not because I made a bad choice and wandered into a space that I didn't know. Hey, the space was just too difficult. And I gave it everything I had and I feel fine about where I'm at. Second guessing whether you go into another type of business or you do something that you just don't know because you think you're smart enough to be able to figure it out, don't do it. Stay in your lane because you've got one life to live and you want to put that forward with your family, with your friends, and your business. So why would you switch around friends and wives and whatever just because you're getting bored and it's just not working? Stay in your lane. That's my number one advice.
Okay, so actually, I am going to take you up on the second part of that then, because so you said for any business owner that would be your advice. What would be the one piece of advice you would have to offer if it was only one piece to someone who owned a business and was wanting to sell it?
It's a two-part answer. The first part is you're in charge. The investment banker or the advisors that are making 5 or 6 or 7%, that's a 5% tail wagging a 95% dog. Stay in charge, educate yourself, understand, ask the questions, know the process. But the second part of that, always think as if you're the buyer. People sell businesses thinking like the seller. We're so cool. We have these metrics. We do this. We have this revenue. Think like the buyer through the entire process. And If you're in charge and you educate yourself and you think like the buyer, you're a smart person. You brought this business to this pinnacle right now where it's going to go to somebody else. Try and think like them, and you'll be in good shape.
That's excellent advice. Thank you for sharing that. If people wanted to reach out to you and learn more about your company or your work, or ask for your assistance in preparing their business for sale, or even facilitating the sale of their business, what are the best ways to reach out to you?
It's real easy. Cutwateradvisory.com is our home base. Cutwater.
Chris, it's been a pleasure having you today. I appreciate your time, and I hope that our listeners learned a lot. Thank you.